What's good, brothers and sisters? Hope you're having a blessed day. Happy Wednesday morning to you. Getting in the red letters this morning, best way to start the day. Matthew 15. Got a little section in there. It says, that which defiles. It's an interesting story. You guys should read the whole thing, but basically the Pharisees come to Jesus and they say, hey, why are your disciples breaking the commandment? They don't wash their hands before they eat. And Jesus says, why do you guys break the commandment? Because you say, the commandment says, honor your father and mother, but your people say, if I've taken this provision here, this money, food, something that they could provide for their parents in their old age, if they say, oh, that's devoted to God, they now withhold it from their parents. He said, thus you break the commandment. So he turns it back on them. In verse 7, Matthew 15:7, he says, you hypocrites, Isaiah was right when he prophesied about you. These people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. They worship me in vain. Their teachings are merely human rules. So these people are worshiping. They're lifting hands. They're honoring God with their lips. They're praising. All for nothing. Jesus called the crowd to him and said, listen and understand, what goes into someone's mouth does not defile them. But what comes out of their mouth, that is what defiles them. And the disciples came to him and they asked, don't you know that the Pharisees were offended when they heard this? And Jesus says, every plant that my Father did not plant will be plucked up by the root. And I'm here to do the plucking, apparently. And then he uses this terminology that all of us have heard, and I don't know how many of us realize this came from the Bible, but it says, leave them, they are blind guides. If the blind lead the blind, both will fall into a pit. It's like when you're growing up and you hear an adult say, it's like the blind leading the blind. How many of us realize those were the words of Jesus? And who was he talking about? The Pharisees. There's this apparent relationship between, in the human psyche of a Pharisee, there's a relationship between, you got to follow these rules. You need to do that right. You need to do this proper. It's the proper way to do things, or however it's phrased. There's kind of that's never void of this other attribute in the human psyche, which is to kind of pass over the evil things which come out of the heart, you know? In other words, is it really important, your physical appearance, but it's not important what you say about other people? Listen to this. Peter says, explain this parable to us. He's still confused. And then Jesus says, are you still so dull? Jesus asked them, don't you see that whatever enters the mouth goes into the stomach and then out of the body? Okay, it's done. Like, again, the physical, the temporal things, you know, what style of dress you may have. And I'm not talking about modesty or immodesty. Personal preference stuff. I mean, it's a good idea to wash your hands before you eat, but it's not a command. So it's not a command for us today. So he says, what you eat comes out of the body, but the things that come out of a person's mouth come from the heart, and these defile them. For out of the heart come evil thoughts, murder, adultery, sexual immorality, theft, false testimony, slander. These are what defile a person, but eating with unwashed hands does not defile them. So I guess the word for today and what I'm getting is, pay no mind to the people who may come to you with certain rules that are traditions of men. You know, I tell brothers all the time that I go to church on Sunday morning with 2 pockets full of grace. Because there's stuff that we do in church. It's not bad. It's just some of it to me is silly because it's just traditions. It's really not anything that we get from the Bible. You know, here in America at church on Sunday morning, there's so many things that we do that it's like a concession for the church. Well, this is the way that we do things now. And the church, I mean those in the pews, to where if we don't have grace to offer, then we can easily get offended because there's so many traditions all around us. But deeper than that, I'm talking about people who would enforce traditions upon us as though it's a religious or moral obligation, there always seems to be a connection with those type of people between, hey, you need to follow these rules, and the overlooking of something that's actually serious, an actual defilement which comes forth out of the body, like slander was mentioned here. Talking bad about somebody, that's a serious thing, and that actually defiles you. But not washing your hands before you eat, apparently you're good. So it's just an interesting thought I was having this morning of us as brothers and sisters. Whoever's listening to this, I don't know how young you may be in your faith, and I know that a lot of times if I talk to people about the church or going to church, one of the most common reactions, like the last 10 years or so, I think, for churchgoers talking to unchurched people is, well, it's just full of hypocrites. It's just a whole bunch of hypocrites. That's why I don't go. I was going and I got burned, or somebody really turned them off and offended them. And I think that what we're talking about this morning in Matthew 15 is kind of the root of that. So if you're a victim of that, and you've allowed it to push you out of the fellowship, just understand, man, there was Pharisees walking amongst the disciples back in Jesus' day. And we're no different. The church, the group on Sunday morning that meets, is full of all kinds of people. True followers of Christ, deceivers, people who are confused and don't even know where they stand, and people who are there for a social club. You got to understand, that's no reflection on Christ, man. He's true. Christ is the one true King, and when asked about these things, he always had an apt reply. Hey, why do you break the commandments? Don't come to me asking me about me breaking the commandments when you're talking about a small thing, when you're leaving your mother and father out to dry here. So whoever that's for, just remember that as we walk and we move forward, not to be affected or slowed down by those who honor God with their lips, but the fruit of their life may show us that their hearts are far from him. No judgment on those people, but we don't have to adhere to their rules. Bless you guys, man. It's a Wednesday. Let's get after it. Love you guys. Jesus is the one true King. See y'all next time.